Yeah, 1 week. Can't wait. Meanwhile, some news out of the UFC. Former UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar has been notified of a potential violation of the anti-doping policy from an out-of-competition drug test administered June 28th. Now, Lesnar beat Mark Hunt by decision at UFC 200 in Las Vegas last weekend, handily winning his first MMA fight in nearly 5 years. The original headline of the card was scrapped 3 days before the event. We all know this, when John Bones Jones tested positive for a banned substance. Coach, how bad of a look is this for the UFC? Right after the Jones stuff, now we have the Lesnar.
Well, here's the thing. That I spent 7 days in Las Vegas for UFC 200.
Yeah, we know.
You killed the coverage, by the way. You did a fantastic job.
Why would you tell him that? Now we're going to have to hear for another 7 days.
You know, I thought I did too. Thank you. I've never experienced in my life a situation where every single day, every half of every single day, there was something else that was happening. There's a reason that on ESPN.com we had almost 10 million page views. That's a ridiculous number. I was in bed the night that John Jones, you know, the potential, possible doping violation. And let's be clear, just so we're not just crushing some of these guys, that the USADA book is about this thick. With that being said, you have to be smart enough to do two things. Whatever you put into your body, you have to check it. And it's as easy as making a phone call and saying, this is what I am taking. I also believe that John Jones did not intentionally take something. I believe that Brock Lesnar, because of some of the things that he said, he wouldn't be dumb enough to say these things and then get popped for a PED or a doping violation, supplement, whatever it is. And all these things are wrapped into the same world. It doesn't matter if it's this or if it's this. It's all under the same thing, and you face a 2-year suspension from USADA. Brock Lesnar said, because when he took his shirt off, he was as cut as I've ever seen him, and I'm sitting there going, wow, this dude looks incredible. And he was asked about that, and he's like, listen, you got to understand, I'm just a jacked white dude. Live with it. That was a quote.
Some of us are built that way, and we look, that's the way it is. I know.
I understand. So, to answer your question, it's a horrible look, because this was the biggest show in UFC history. It was supposed to be McGregor-Diaz, then John Jones and Cormier, and then it ended up being the ladies. And I thought because of the intrigue that it still came off as a success. But on the heels of that, and Brock Lesnar came out in a statement to the AP, and he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Chael Sonnen, who's my partner doing the UFC, said to me, USADA has never been wrong. If you get popped, it is 100% of the time they are accurate, and it is something that you have violated. So the look is awful. As we go forward, how do you get the hype machine going again? I have no idea, because Brock Lesnar, I've never experienced anything like it. He was the star of stars. He was the guy everybody wanted to talk to. He was engaging. He was entertaining. He had personality. He had everything that you would want. He was the best part of that card. The main event card, that was the most compelling fight to see. There's no question.
Yeah.
And he really surprised a lot of people. And coming out of that win over Mark Hunt, people were saying, wait a second, maybe this guy can be the dude we thought he was going to be 5 years ago when he had that bad illness. But now with this and facing a possible suspension, maybe it will be one time and out, and the UFC has to go back to the drawing board.
This has nothing to do with John Jones or Brock Lesnar. This is just my theory on mixed martial arts and the importance of squashing out PEDs. And UFC has now partnered with USADA, so that's the right steps. But when we deal with PEDs in any sport, this isn't baseball where you're hitting a baseball. This isn't football where you're throwing or catching. This is you are hitting another human being. So the use of PEDs could be potentially life-threatening in some cases. I will bring up Michael Page, who at Bellator 158 Saturday fractured the skull of Cyborg Santos. It was a gruesome injury. If there was any foul play involved, a gruesome injury can become even worse. So that's why this is so important, that they are able to clean up their sport, and they're making lots of steps. With regards to UFC 200, it was clear to me, and they were dealt some really bad cards, starting off with Conor McGregor and then obviously John Jones. But they were hell-bent on making this the biggest card ever, and I get it. But at some point, you have to realize that you are bigger than that card. So when they made the changes, when they brought in Anderson Silva to fight in Daniel Cormier, which that was an awful fight to watch. It was a bad matchup. I did not enjoy it at all. I enjoyed the weekend of the cards. Thursday, Friday were great. Saturday all day was good. The main event was not what I wanted to see from UFC. But when they're hell-bent on making this the biggest card ever, and then a day later we get the news of the sale, it makes me scratch my head a little bit about what was the reason they wanted to make this so big. And it felt like a blaze of glory moment for UFC. They are so good. 202 is going to be off the charts, and we could see that. But the reason I was bringing this up about Brock Lesnar is they fast-tracked him, it would appear, to get him on that card. They needed something like that to make it as big as it was, and he got there. And that included an USADA exemption, which left me scratching my head as well. And when I hear this afterwards, I wonder how we got from point A to point B. But UFC 200, it was always going to be big, but it has this dark cloud around it because of how it got to that point.
I have to believe, and maybe I'm being naive, maybe it's being too close to it, in full disclosure, but I've got to believe that Brock Lesnar, who, and I know this for a fact, this was being discussed back in March. So even if Conor McGregor was on the card and nothing would have changed, Brock Lesnar still would have been on the card. Okay? That's fact.
And it's great to have on the card. That's a big name and a super fight that everyone wants to see.
And we know in the UFC or the WWE or the NFL, whatever it is, you got to have star power. You got to make people want to pay $79.99 to watch a night of fights. I actually agree with you.
It's a pay-per-view business. You're right. They got to do that.
When it comes to the $4 billion sale, I believe that the Fertittas, who I think want to get into the NFL and own the Raiders if they come to Vegas.
And they got a pocket full of money.
I think they got sick and tired of losing their main events, of losing their fighters, of dealing with this kind of stuff. Dana White looked at me as we were getting ready to do the interview on Saturday pre-fight, because we just had it all day. So he comes up, he just looked exhausted. And he was like, this has been the worst week of my career. Now, I don't know about you two, but if somebody, and we found out later, they had just signed that afternoon, if somebody handed me a check,
maybe it wasn't so
for
bad.
$360 million, I'd have been like.
But that shows you how much he cares, Dana, how invested he is.
I think there's no question. There's no question. I think he loves being Dana White and running it more than he loves the money. Because he would have walked out with the Fertittas. He wouldn't have stuck around.
Well, that's why he's in the middle of every main event with his face right there, so you can see Dana between the main guys.
And I agree with you on the Fertittas in the NFL, because with their sons playing at Bishop Gorman, and that's really their number one in terms of football as their favorite sport there. But I want to talk about the landscape. Obviously, it's changing. We give them props for buying it. What did they buy it for? $2 million, and then 15 years later selling it for $4 billion.
Great business on their part.
And I want to give props for Anderson Silva for stepping in, obviously, basically off the street and coming and taking this fight. At least so there was a big name. But how does the landscape look now? Like, what is next for Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier?
You know what was crazy is that at ringside, octagon side, whatever you want to call it, Conor McGregor walked in that night. And ironically, I looked down, I said, he was supposed to be the main event. And then he got bounced out. He got bounced out because he would not come to Vegas to do a press conference and promote the fight. So 2 days previous, he was in Vegas to do a press conference and promote the fight at 202. He now knows, because he's a smart dude, he's a smart guy, that he is, quote unquote, the chosen one. After what he witnessed from the second row, Jose Aldo wins, he goes over me and you. And McGregor looks at him and goes, hey, if it means this, then I'm good with it. That's the landscape of the UFC. The problem they're going to have is you've got to have, at least to me, on a pay-per-view card, 2 or 3 deep of megastars, which is why 200 was so attractive. But going forward, unless you can teach these guys, maybe they should hire me. Because this is one of the jobs I had in the WWE. Well, I'm saying, as far as this is concerned,
do a video job interview right now.
You have got to teach these fighters how to be entertaining in addition to fighting well in the octagon.
That's fair, because that's what Conor McGregor does.
Yeah, but
he does both.
Yeah.
He's
and that's
so
what he
special at what he does. That's him natural. You don't have these personalities.
But the trash talking does add to his appeal.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah. And these other guys don't know how to do it.
Right.
And you got to learn how to do it.
And to your point about the star power, it is critical in a pay-per-view model. If you're going to dish out that money, you want to see these big stars. And they have 3 breakthrough stars that people would stop to watch at any time. It's Jon Jones, it's Conor McGregor, it's Ronda Rousey. We don't know where Ronda Rousey is. She would set any pay-per-view ablaze with her presence. We don't know if she is. We don't know if she's going to fight. Nothing has been announced. Jon Jones, we don't know if he comes back from this. And Conor McGregor, if he loses to Nate Diaz at 202, that star is not shining as bright as well. He can fall back on Jose Aldo. I would love to see it You would love to see it. You would love to see it.
Yeah.
Would America, would the people that normally won't get a pay-per-view get it?
casual fans,
They
yeah.
would not, because they say, "This. I just saw this guy lose twice."
That's the
so they're this close to losing a lot of star power, which is required. More stars will come around. I'm sure of it. The next guy we haven't talked about is waiting in the wings. But right now, with the top 3, the main food groups of UFC, it's very dicey right now.
That's the downside of the UFC, is that if you want to me, it's a great sport to have a dominant champion, because you got both sides of the fence covered. You got people who want to see him lose, then you got people that want to see him continue this long win streak. That's why the John Jones thing was so devastating. You got 13 wins in a row. He had seemingly gotten past everything. He sat in front of all of us, and he said, I'm seeing this fight as a way to close the door on all the negativity. He had this very, according to her, popular publicist that apparently they're making a movie of, and Jennifer Aniston is playing her, to kind of navigate
that intrigues
him.
me. I want to see that.
Maybe. And so now, as you start to go into the future, we thought he would be that guy. He's only 27 years old. There is going to be a place for John Jones when he comes back, if it is a 2-year suspension or a year suspension. But when he comes back, you don't think all eyes are going to be on this dude? He can't take one step off that track, or else he's going to be right back where he was. To me, they're in a really hard spot here unless they develop more stars, or George St. Pierre, who says, hey, I'm ready to come back.
Oh, I missed GSP. That's why I was so excited. Even though Silva's past his prime, those were the guys. Scott Evans, all those guys. So many. It's a changing of the guard are retiring in terms of, I know the new names are up and coming, but exactly what you're saying, the big stars.
I'm all right for a senior circuit. If you get these guys to fight each other, we never had those super fights, GSP and Silva. I'm okay with that if the matchup is right between those guys. But if you get these guys, Emelianenko, the Russian who beat everyone, Fedor Emelianenko, you bring him in and you fight somebody, I would like to see that, as long as it's kind of, you're not dealing one of the top contenders who probably lose to at this point. You bring that as a second-tier fight. I'm in.
Let's bring it all back, though. So what is the impact now of John Jones? Obviously, the almost nearly 2-year layoff. Now he came here, is on the set. We're all rooting for him to come back. This happens, sets him back. Brock Lesnar, while hopeful, he dominates. This sets him back. So selling the UFC for the $4 billion, how much of an impact are these PEDs going to have on the future here?
It's not the Fertitta's problem anymore.
Yeah,
that's one thing we can say.
I think this also plays into what they have promised and what Dana White has talked about. It absolutely plays a big part. Luke Rockhold, former champion, came out and said, this is a good thing. We need to clean up the sport. You got to understand, people think the fighters are all training in one team. They're not. They have their separate teams. They do their own things. Then they come in and fight for one night. So, to me, until you've got the coaches and you've got the teams around him, because Dana White came out and he said, I haven't spoken to John Jones. I will not speak to John Jones. And he should have got rid of all the people around him a long time ago. Until the fighters do that, I think we're going to continue to see them try to skirt the issue or be smart enough to write down what you're taking, because I don't believe everybody tries to cheat. I think they try new things to give you more energy. They try new things to try and, make the training sessions longer.
Or if it's for recovery.
Or for recovery. And then when it's on the list of banned substances, well, then all of a sudden they look like they're this big cheater. And I don't believe that to be true. But it's not a good look. And for John Jones, for Brock Lesnar, wow, what that could have been. And now they cost themselves in future earnings millions.
Dana White, I hope he's not taking Brock Lesnar's calls. I hope he's angry when everything comes on the back end of that. But the other thing you have to mention, I'll say it here quickly, is I don't know how you do this, but the bigger issue is not the bigger. The big issue is the PEDs. But the big issue affecting these cards is guys getting injured in training. And I don't know how you curtail that. You say, be more, they have to go all out in training.
You have to go all out.
But it's been one after another, after another, after another. And maybe they have to look at it a close way. Maybe there's an answer that they can resolve it, because that would be a huge headache that they could dodge. But I don't know how you do it.
I think if Ronda Rousey comes back this year, that could be.
Better hurry up.
That'd be huge. Ronda's on the phone with her right now, like, Ronda, come on, get us back. All right. UFC 202, can I get picks? I know it's Sewer. Can you not make picks because you cover it?
Yeah,
I can, absolutely.
What do you think, McGregor or Diaz?
I'm actually not going because the very next day is SummerSlam, where Brock is supposed to be at. So I can't be
you're right in the middle of it.
So, so I plan on being at SummerSlam. Well, I'm not saying that.
Appreciate you making time for us, though.
You said it. I will say this. I think that Conor McGregor has learned his lesson, and I believe in his greatness. And he has been a lot more humble this time around, but he's also starting to be that Conor McGregor again. I think that he's going to get the job done this time, because to me, he is the guy that has to carry the UFC, and he knows it.
I think I respect Conor McGregor by sticking to his guns. I want to go fight at 170, but it's a mistake. That is Nate Diaz's comfort zone.
Stockton,
I think
stand
Nate
up.
Diaz is going to beat him up really good.
Stand up.
Stockton, the toughest town in America, maybe the world, and that is part of it. But I think he's gonna lay a licking on it because Conor McGregor is second guessing what he's got to do to be successful. And Nate Diaz says, "I'm here. I just fight," and I think it's gonna be a very similar situation without maybe the good start from Conor McGregor.
We'll see.
Love talking a little UFC on this show. This is fun, guys. And I know how
and we
passionate
brought up Stockton.
Yes, we did.
We love you,
Kill two birds
Stockton.
in one stone. All right, up next, we're going to switch gears to college football. Our next guest led arguably the best defense in the country last season in Alabama. Now he returns home, the new head man. Congrats of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Coach
Walker in the house.
Good.
Hey, Coach. Great to be with you.
Coach, pleasure to meet you.
I love that one.
I love